Okay, well, thanks to everybody for coming. We have all our usual suspects except Rocky and Russ.
Is it supposed to be
Thanks for
blue or
joining
green? Blue, okay, blue. Okay.
Yeah, but not up at our table with us too often.
He has been the last couple of times.
Okay, well, I missed
You
one.
haven't been here.
Perfect.
Really?
There you go.
All right, well then, Russ,
I'm new.
glad somebody's accepting my welcome tonight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, make sure your blue lights are on.
How's that?
Thank you. Yep,
That work?
good.
All right. Yes, I'm sitting in for Counselor Perry tonight.
Okay, great. All right, minutes?
Go ahead, Danny, you had a correction.
I just wanted to make a correction, because the city of Damascus officially disincorporated in July, on the August meeting minutes, they show me as mayor, city of Damascus, and there was no city of Damascus. So I would like to suggest that we change my title to just unincorporated Clackamas County. If you want to give it an area, that's fine. but-
CSD one, aren't you in?
CCSD
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
northeast area, I don't know, just unincorporated, but yeah,
And that's
that up.
throughout the minutes.
yes.
All right. That seems like a quick fix. Any other comments? None? Okay,
You need a motion?
yeah, I'd hear.
Okay, I move that the minutes from the August 25th, 2016 meeting be approved as amended to change the title of Diana Helm.
Yours.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Abstain. Anybody opposed? Okay, all right. Great. Okay, so we have reached the public comment portion of the evening. If you wish to speak and address our group, please fill out a blue card. I have one of them. Yep.
I didn't hear you. Yes, I'm trying to figure out that thing to work. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed a lot of other things. And you were saying?
Can you just state your name and
Don't
residence for the
usually,
record?
It's over there.
Okay.
People know I'm here,
Okay.
out there. Nobody's. Okay, thank you. Anybody doesn't know me? He can vouch. I don't even do that in West Lane.
Okay.
But anyway, good evening, and I'm glad all the hullabaloo of the candidates are in place. I got all my wishes done. I hope all of you have the same thing. But at the same time, what I want to talk is, I hear a little about, it's all right to talk, that finally you're getting, it's not all there. Your acts together. If I remember right after my operation in January, February, I was very upset. All of you were very disconnected, but I'm hearing that it's coming to a solution. And let's not divorce, go apart while this thing is getting together. Because I also want to thank Greg in here, the director of West, when articles like this comes in, the newspaper, it connects with all the county people, incorporated or incorporated, that uses this facility that we're talking tonight. Then they get a little better gifts on it and say, Morton, I mean, none of us really, with all the equipment that we have for transparency and to inform our residents in Clackamas County, what the meetings happen because, first of all, they don't use, they're not on their equipment to learn what's going on all the time, but they will read a piece of paper. And so I would encourage for Greg and for you guys, even in separate way, to do articles like this. Greg doesn't have to do it all by himself. And it not just teaches, but it informs the city, the residents, unincorporated or corporated that uses this facility that we're talking tonight even is affected. And it will make it more sensible for them. If, God forbid, we need to have some sort of bonds or something to put it in the ballot. Little by little, they know what's happening. Do I make myself act together? I'm glad somebody used it also in the newspaper today. See, people listen to me. So that makes me happy. Thank you. Is this my coffee? I don't want to coffee. I got my own butter.
I don't think you need any more coffee.
I tell you, you were my last call. It works now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Where's the baby?
Oh, he is big enough that he doesn't like coming to late night meetings anymore. Yeah. Okay. Moving right along, on time despite our late start. Greg, you want to call Lynn up here and we can truck along?
So I'm Greg Geist, Director of Water Environment Services, and we're going to have a presentation by Lynn Chacoin, our Capital Program Manager, that describes, as I alluded to, actually I sent out information 3 weeks ago or so about the diminution of the cost of this project. And then we're going to have Steve Donovan, our consultant, our financial consultant, come up and talk about the impact to the ratepayers under various scenarios. I would very much like to get input tonight based on what we present as to how or if the district's rate zones should partner on this. I think we're given a range of options, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at the impact of the ratepayers. So Lynn's presentation is about 10 minutes. I'd ask maybe that we hold questions until she's done, if possible. Thank you. Come on up, Lynn.
Good evening.
You might have to adjust it for your height.
And your mic's not on, that's why.
It's blue.
Is it? Oh, it doesn't look blue from over here.
Does that work?
There you go.
Yikes. Okay. So, hello. I'm gonna give you an update on the solids handling project. I've got a couple slides on background that you've seen probably if you look through your packet. And then I'm gonna outline our recommended facilities, talk about cost and the cost, revised cost, and implementation schedule. So, solids handling project objectives basically is to provide solids capacity to meet 2040 needs in a way that provides the maximum value to the ratepayers. Little bit of a reminder of where in the treatment plant this project takes place, and that's on the solid side downstream of thickening, solid stabilization and dewatering. The project was initially conceived in the 2007 master plan. And as conceived, the project had two digesters and solids handling facilities, an array of related facilities. You can see on here that I've put the purpose of each of those facilities. So not all for capacity, but all that support the solids handling project. They're necessary. And it is prudent to do those along with this project. But I thought it was important to break out what was capacity and what was the purpose was for reliability operations. Our revised approach that we've been working on for the last 9 months or so recommends one digester, that we phase the digesters basically. We'll build one by 2020, and then we'll build one in 10 or so years, another one. That reduces the 2020 cost significantly and the associated impact on rates. We've made some other adjustments to the project as we got into the detail of design that reduces the cost. We can talk about any of those in detail later at a separate time if you'd like. This is the originally proposed project from the 2007 master plan. It had quite extensive new solids building and truck loadout, which includes some cake storage, 2 digesters, digester control building, and the associated improvements, condition improvements to the existing facilities. Our new facilities, our new revised facilities for Phase 1, this is what will be built in 2020, include 1 digester, a digester control building. We've eliminated the solids building and put the dewatering on the top floor of the digester control building, saving some costs there. And the truck loadout, if you will see right here, provides odor control for our solids facilities. We have cake storage above, centrifuges above. The solids drop into the trucks. We can load them in an enclosed space, and that addresses odor issues. That's the plan for 2020. I'd like to introduce the subject of costs by giving you a little bit of background on cost estimates. So there's a very standard approach, standardized and recommended approach to cost estimating for these types of facilities, where between 15 and 20% level of design, the cost estimate we've developed or was developed is a Class 4 cost estimate. Our target cost for the project does not move, but the certainty around that moves. We build in a contingency, not to accommodate this uncertainty spread. I mean, that's still the uncertainty, but to help us hit this target all the way through. And as we progress through design, contingency will be reduced. The basis of the construction cost estimate, the estimate includes 6% for general conditions, that's contractor mob, demob generally, contractor overhead and profit, and I mentioned the level 4 contingency, 25% is appropriate for level 4. And that is the construction cost. Add to the construction costs approximately 25%. It's what is standard for internal costs to WES plus engineering. Here is the revised construction cost estimate. And I'm happy to answer questions on this at the end. But you can see, and I'll have some graphics to break this down. But I put a cost by each of these facilities for you, and we're at about $31 million for construction cost for the 2020 facilities. Broken out by capacity or other purpose, you can see that we have about 17.7 million attributable to capacity expansion. I believe that's 57%. And the rest is for operational improvements, condition, improving reliability, or odor control. This new approach reduces costs from 52 million to 31. Again, these are construction costs. You might question why that's 52 million instead of 56. There was a markup for engineering, legal, admin that got it to 56 before. It was a smaller markup than I'm using, but I want to look apples to apples, so construction costs here. Anaerobic digestion and related to anaerobic digestion is 18.7. If you're going to check my math, you'll see that this 9 million, this adds up to 5 million more than 30.9. That's because I couldn't figure out on my spreadsheet how to round this number for some reason. So anyway, there you go. And implementation, we'll be wrapping up within this next month, the conceptual design report. We will do another round of value engineering to get some outside opinions on where we could save more money. And then we move into detailed design and begin construction spring, summer of 2018. Still on target to complete by 2020. Any questions?
Yes. When you're talking about the digesters and some of this other equipment, how much is that actually new capacity? How much is backup capacity? Or is it all new capacity?
It's not looked at that as backup or new capacity. Capacity is capacity. We are out of capacity to be able to operate in a reliable way. So we cannot, the controlling criteria that we talked about in one of the previous meetings is the ability to take a digester off for service at annual average conditions. We cannot do that.
Right. So I mean, that's kind of redundancy, right? Or backup.
It's required for, no, I wouldn't, well, I can see why you're saying that. It is not, we don't have sufficient capacity to operate, and that is, having that backup is part of the capacity you need to operate.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I still got a couple of questions. Sorry, Eric. When you, down here, you had talked about profit, use that term here.
Overhead and profit for the contractor?
So that's the profit for the contractor?
Overhead and profit.
Okay, for the contractor. And you're still on track, I mean, moving down the track to get this done by 2020, I would
We're
assume.
trying very hard, yes.
And thank you for doing that. It's something that we need to ensure economic growth. So I really appreciate the efforts here and moving this forward. I'd also like to say that I appreciate the county board's efforts in moving this down the track. So appreciate that. That's all I had.
Eric and then Russ?
I just have a couple questions on this slide here where you're talking about the various components. You say down here under the centrifuges, it says replace equipment to allow extended operation. Does that mean we're having to put new centrifuges in? Or,
We're going to downsize our centrifuge and update the technology. It makes it easier to operate unattended. And so the unit we have now is dated technology. We're going to sell it and then buy a smaller, more modern model that allows us to operate around the clock rather than just 5 days a week, one shift.
okay, are we still going to be accepting WAS from Kellogg and running that through the centrifuges?
Until we have, in our capital plan, we have construction of a centrifuge dewatering facility at Kellogg. Until that time, we will be doing that here.
Okay. And is that going to be including, I mean, is that going to have, the one at Kellogg, will that be the same kind of centrifuge? In other words-
Yes. We will have 3 total. We own 1 now. We will exchange a bigger one for a smaller one to match what we have now, and then we'll buy a new one at Kellogg.
Okay, the other question I have has to do with the phasing reductions. That's this slide here. And my question has to do with, you've got a $30.9 million as an estimated cost.
Yep,
Does that include contingency and the West overhead?
that includes contingency. It's construction cost. It does not include the markup for ELA.
For 25% that we're talking about?
That's the number I like to use. The estimate, you'll see a different number when Steve comes up here to talk about rates, and that's 37.5. and that's a loaded number, not quite 25%, but, we're dealing with estimates. This number will also change because we're going to look at value engineering to reduce that. We're also going to take a little bigger, a little longer look at building a little bigger digester, 1.3 versus 1.0 million gallons. Since we're digging a hole, we have room for it. We might do that. It'd be the same diameter as existing tanks. So there will be adjustments to
In
this
this
cost.
phase one, are you building enough, or are you putting a foundation in there for the second digester?
We are doing some work for the second digester, but we aren't building it up to ground level.
No, I understand that. I'm just, because you're gonna have to mitigate that, garbage dump. So I was just wondering, as long as we're doing that, are we also preparing for the second digester at the same time?
To some extent, yes.
One thing I should also call out, on the map, when you showed the original design, you'll notice that the building, they were much, much closer to the river and in the environmental zone. So with Lynn's hard work, that digester is now kind of directly, the one down to the right is much, much closer. And that will maybe get us into some better soils as well.
Yeah. Should help with the dewatering. It'll reduce costs because we're not running piping so far. I still would like to scoot this up if we can. This is the water resource area, so we need to better define that and figure out what the implications are. But moving it up helped.
Okay. The only two other questions I have to do with how you propose to do the, let's see if I can find that slide. How you propose to, do the odor control, and other than just the building itself, and how you propose to generate electricity off of the sludge?
Okay, so odor control first. We've costed it as a biotower, but we're gonna, as we move into detailed design, look at alternatives for odor control. This is priced as a biotower, which is, I believe, the same technology they use at the MBR. But operations would like to look at other technologies, and we'll do that moving forward. Power generation, we are going to use a digester gas on this project in boilers to heat the process. We're not generating electricity here. That is not related to capacity. We've done a study of it, and I will present it at another time. We've got some funding from ET Energy Trust to do that study, and we are talking to them right now about what kind of funding they would give us to make the payback on a power generation facility acceptable.
Okay, so right now you're just designing it so that you produce enough energy to heat the digester, to keep those
Yeah, we're
going.
producing hot water. If we added an engine, we would produce power and hot water. The economics of that, frankly, is not good. And we're finishing
Yeah,
up
that's
that
fine.
process, and we'll present it later, but it's not related to this immediate issue, and so we put it to the side.
Okay, thank you.
Russ?
Yeah, a couple of questions. Since you have that slide up there now, this new facility with the dewatering and the odor control, is it only going to serve that one digester?
No, it's sized to serve the second one when it's there.
Okay, so there's somehow linked up
Yeah.
material gets conveyed over, is that?
Oh, are you talking about the existing digesters?
Yeah, yeah. Are they going to just continue to operate as they do and be loaded outside, or?
Oh, no,
How's
this will all feed into this dewatering here.
It will?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
all right. So I guess my first question is, on the slide of the costs. In the 2007 plan, there was a plan for 2 digesters. And is this 52 million supposed to represent a plan for 2 digesters? And now is that Okay,
Yes.
so I'm trying to understand, it's rigorous evaluation. I'm not, what does that mean? In terms of, I mean, the main cost difference here appears to be just going from 2 digesters to 1. Is that-
No, the cost of 2 digesters, the second digester is about $6 million. So what we did, if I can go back here, the rigorous evaluation is looking at things like phasing the digesters. Solids handling facility, we're changing our operations, so we aren't going to put in as many machines. We're going to operate one machine 24/7. We are not doing centrate equalization and frankly, don't think we need to even in phase 2. That was in here. And the combined heat and power was not directly related, and we took that out.
I see. Okay,
We also did, looked at saving money by not building another separate building, solids handling, and we combined that into the other building.
okay.
Yeah.
But there were, I guess, some other changes, which, I mean, it's why it's not really half that, but it's a little more than half, it looks like. But on this slide, the one previous, interesting to see that 43% are operational costs. Is that what you're, different operational?
Not just operations, but odor control. For example, that enclosed truck unloading station or
Okay.
truck loading station, that's odor control. Condition, we're having to do a lot of work to, well, not a lot. We're making modifications to the existing digesters. There's roofing, there's some foam control. There's a sludge blending tank to help the operation of the digesters,
Okay.
things like that.
So some of these costs we see in phase 1 for these operational components, will they then serve the second phase?
Yes,
They will?
Yes.
So they'll have a dual purpose, or they'll
well,
essentially?
yes,
Okay,
capacity for 2040.
okay. Thank you.
Chair Ludlow?
So it's not just digestion and the amount of digestion, it's efficiency changes you're making along the way too, is that correct?
Efficiency,
Operational
condition,
changes, how's
reliability. Mhm.
The slide that says the $30.9 million, this one, you know, have you factored in the cost of money, the debt servicing necessary for this project at all? I know you'd have to be guessing on what the interest rate would be, but there's some prognosticators out there that could give that. So have you factored in the cost of money, so to speak?
This does not include the cost
I
of
know
money.
it says construction on here, but
yeah.
Ultimately, it's going to have to come out of the budgets of both of these
Steve,
districts.
I think, I'll put words in his, Steve looked at that, so you'll see that on his slides.
Okay.
This is in, escalated to midpoint of construction in terms of dollar value.
Eric?
Yeah, I just have 2 more questions. You said the next digester costs about 6 million?
That's what I remember. Yeah,
Okay.
pretty sure.
All right, so we're doing all these improvements and everything else for about 37 million. And if we
Yeah.
did them both at the same time, we'd be looking at about 6 million more. Is that correct?
Add the 25% ELA to that, but yeah, either, if we talk construction dollars, then yeah, we're adding 6 million in construction dollars. Memory serves. It's in that neighborhood.
Okay. I'm just wondering, in terms of the delay, have you factored in the impact of construction cost materials and increases from the engineering estimates? In other words, the inflation that's going to go on between now and the time you're going to phase in that other $6 million digester?
No, those are all in midpoint of construction dollars. So I have not gone and made a present worth cost and put that money out 10 years later and brought it back.
Yeah, well, the reason I'm asking that is because if it's only going to be 6 million more, why don't we just do the whole thing at this time and be done with it, as opposed to phasing it in, and over a period of time, it's now going to cost us $9 million when you do the phase 2. Because it sounds to me like you're making all the improvements to be able to handle that second digester at a minimal cost, just to construct the digester and hook it up. Right?
We're trying to minimize costs 2020. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm just throwing that out as a hypothetical, that's all.
Yes.
And then I noticed in here the solids handling project objective, one of them is to provide the capability to upgrade from Class B to Class A. How do you propose to accomplish that, or is that not going to be done?
Yeah, we will not be producing Class A, but Class A, we don't want any stranded investment. So so there's two things. One is the construction of the digester itself needs to be different and more expensive, more robust, thicker concrete, maybe thicker rebar, structurally more robust to handle the higher temperatures that are required to make Class A sludge. So that, and then we're also accommodating or making sure we have footprint for larger heat exchangers to heat to the higher temperatures in the digester control building.
Okay, and that's being designed in now?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Russ had a question.
Markley?
Russ is
Oh,
up first.
sorry.
I'm sorry, no, I left it up.
Okay. I had the same questions about, that Eric had about phasing in the digesters. If it's, the construction cost is 6 million.
Yeah,
I know, but it
6
just,
to 10.
right. But the idea is simply, if it costs less to do it now than doing it in 2030, I don't know if there's any consideration being done for that. And then that's just a thought, but the second question is, you're selling this old centrifuge, who would buy that?
There's an exchange website for these types of things. We can try to sell it there, we can try to sell it directly, or we can sell it back to the manufacturer.
So like
Kinda
on
like a used
Craigslist or
car.
something?
For
Craigslist
for
or
wastewater treatment.
eBay, yeah, okay. Just curious. Thank you.
Just one point of clarification on the point about we're providing capability for Class A, but we're not, I'm not sure. You're designing for that, but we're not designing for that? Or we're not
We will-
building for that, or we're?
We are not required to produce Class A now, so we are not going to produce Class A. But the facilities that we are constructing could be, if someday that's required, the facilities that we're constructing could be wrapped into what is needed to produce Class A.
And if I can just chime in, the Environmental Protection Agency has been kind of rattling their saber for over a decade about potentially requiring our types of facilities to produce Class A.
Right.
So should they do that, we'll be ready.
Yeah, we cannot we'll have to build some other facilities to do it. But these would be part of those. It would not be a stranded investment.
Well, in regard to that, though, we're running into more and more restrictions in terms of being able to spread the Class B solids on fields for field dispersion. In fact, that's one of the issues we're running into now, I believe, in the wintertime, is that we don't have that many facilities or areas that we can do that. It's becoming tighter and tighter and tighter. And I'm just wondering, is that going to a Class A solid, would that alleviate some of that
Yeah.
pressure?
And actually, our issues right now are with the liquids that come out of Kellogg. We can land apply those locally during the summertime, but over the past several years, DEQ has gotten more and more stringent about allowing that to be land applied in the summer.
It's
So-
weather related.
Or in the winter. So, yeah.
Okay, so we don't have a problem with the solids dispersion?
Well, that's why we want to do solids thickening at Kellogg, so that we're not hauling liquids around. But as
Right.
far as our fields out east, we don't have a shortage of fields for our cake biosolids
Okay,
product.
okay, that was my question.
Yeah, it's the liquids that are problematic.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. I'm always last. So in refinancing the CCSD #1 debt, we freed up about $8 million,
7.9.
7.9. That seems to help pay for a second digester. I'm curious, I know we're laser focused on keeping rates as affordable as possible. But interest rates are also extraordinarily low right now for borrowing money. I don't know if that will still be the case 14 years from now. And I'm curious if we should be looking more aggressively at financing the second digester now, knowing that we're going to need it at some point down the road, if you're going all in.
Yeah, there is no operations they would be cheering to hear that we would build a fourth digester. There's no engineering reason that we couldn't or shouldn't. There's no operational reason that we shouldn't. It was clearly just to provide just-in-time facilities. So the ultimate cost will be higher to do it in this phased way, but it reduces our initial cost to do it this way.
Initial ratepayer impact.
Yes.
Anna?
Going back to the EPA might require, is that built in? That sounds like that would have to be an upgrade or a retrofit of some kind to the existing system or to the system that is being planned. Is that number built in here as well?
No, because we're not constructing it now.
What's built in there, though, is, so, for example, the thickness of the walls of a digester, our current digesters would not be sufficient to produce Class A. They're not structurally capable of doing that. We would build ones that are in this new digester. So it is built into that cost.
It is, okay, that
that.
was my
Yeah, that's
question.
it.
It is
Yeah.
built into
Yeah,
the
yeah.
cost.
There will be
Okay.
additional, like she said, heating. So we have a certain type of amount of heat that we need to generate. So we would make a boiler or buy a boiler that's capable of a certain amount of output. But if we went to Class A, we would have to buy a bigger boiler and other equipment in order to achieve that. But we have the foundation.
It's a higher temperature process, so we're building the tank for the higher temperatures, and we're providing footprint in the building to put the bigger equipment in.
All right, thank you.
Is there any engineering advantage to building a second digester so you can refurbish the two existing ones at some point? Or does having one extra provide you enough?
Having the one extra, especially if it's 1.3, but even 1.0 allows us to take one digester off at a time, clean it, do the things we want to do to it, so it operates better, put it back on and take the other one off. So one at a time, yeah.
I mean, I don't want to belabor this point, but I do think it's worth, in my mind, revisiting if it's only a third of this overall cost roughly or less, what the impact would be on the rates, because it's taken us nearly 2 years to get to agreement on this process right now. It may take a similarly longer period of time with a new group of people, say in 5 or 6 years, to agree on a second digester addition or whatever technology that's going to be. So depending on the rate impact, I mean, I can see this being significant cost savings in the long run to ratepayers.
I was just going to chime in. The other part of the reasoning behind this was technology. We don't know. We've had a lot of discussions around here about technology and what might or might not be available in the future. So this was also a way to hedge against a technological breakthrough that could alleviate the need or reduce the cost in the future. So that's kind of the concept. And you know, frankly, building capacity in that large of an increment, well, I mean, it's viable. You could do it. It wouldn't be necessary. It wouldn't need it. It would be sitting fallow essentially until 2030.
Well, let me throw this out there, a use for it. When we present the cogen CHP power production to you, the only way that makes sense financially is if we bring in external feedstock. That's usually brown grease from restaurant traps. It makes gas, and you combine that with your sludge and you make gas. We cannot do that with one additional digester. If we had two, we have room to do that. And that's part of that analysis on whether it's financially viable or not. We have to build a new digester now, and that's part of that financial analysis that we did. So just so you know, right now the payback is 14 years. That's too long, in my view. We are waiting to hear from Energy Trust on what they would provide to get that down to less than 10 years, which is what I told them we needed to do to make that something we would consider. Not to go through the whole analysis now, but there are other considerations, operational considerations in doing that. It's very high odor. So we have to control that. It's also very operationally challenging to put a new feedstock in your digesters, and we already have operational problems with our digesters. So just, there you go. But if we wanted to keep that option open, we need 4 digesters.
Eric?
My last couple of questions. I'm assuming that you've considered the seismic impact of the next big one. And
Yes.
have designed that, because I understood that you had to go down about 3 or 4 more feet in order to keep that thing from sliding into the river.
Yeah, it'll be built to the new current seismic code.
Okay.
That does mean that it goes down to bedrock, and that's why for the same diameter digester, we can build a 1.3 million gallon digester. It's going to be deeper.
Okay, the only other question I have is, and it's getting back to Markley's backup situation. If one or more of those digesters become upset, where do we put the materials that are in those digesters? Currently, if those digesters, because they're both being operated at capacity, if they become upset, you're dumping it out on the ground there. Because you've got to clear that stuff out of the digester to bring it back into a stable condition. So is 3 going to allow us to do that, or?
3 will reduce the loading to the digesters. But we're also constructing the sludge blending tanks specifically to minimize the upset to the digester. So we'll even out our loading to the digester. We are also putting in some foam suppression equipment in the new digester and retrofitting the old digester so we don't have that issue, or we minimize that issue, mitigate it. In addition to surface draw off, which we don't have now, to get the foam out.
I mean, what's everybody's sort of sense on this? If you, in your professional opinion, both of you, don't think it makes sense to do that secondary investment, but having just been through a library bond and a waterfront bond, I know bond costs are no joke. They're expensive, and they have a certain amount that we're just paying to the bond agent to help finance these things. If there's a argument to be made for doing the second one sooner than 2030 in tandem with this, I'd be interested in hearing it.
Other than what I mentioned on the CHP, it gives you options, although there's other things to consider. And, it's the trade-off in rates versus having that capacity.
I think I heard Greg say that basically if we expand and build a second digester, that we're going to have excess capacity. Not only that, but we're shutting ourselves out of any future technology that may mitigate the need for a second digester in the future. In addition to the fact that you indicated that it wouldn't sit fallow because we could use, what was that, brown
Grease.
brown grease? Okay. And the brown grease would work, but it's going to create a tremendous amount of odor, so you got additional odor control capacity problems and all that other stuff. And so, as a ratepayer, I'm not really excited about paying for fallow capacity or excess capacity. And I'm just throwing that out there. Even though it may cost less to build it at this time, have excess capacity is really not gonna sit too well with the ratepayers if they know that you're building for something that won't be or may not be needed for another 10 or 15 years.
That's why we backed off to 1.
And if and in that 10 to 15 years, you might have a lot more ratepayers at that time, based on the growth, who would be they could absorb that additional cost at that time much easier. I mean, I'm just throwing that out as
Yeah.
a thought.
I don't think you have to argue with her. I just wanted to make sure we were making the
No,
right decision, not just
Yeah.
the financially prudent one for right now for ratepayers, but also the long-term financially prudent
Yeah.
one.
yeah, no, I agree with you. And I initially, I agreed, that it would make sense to build it. If it's only cost $6 to $7 million, build it now.
6 to 10.
Or 6, okay, excuse me, 6 to 10. But by the same token, you've got that issue of, the ratepayers paying for excess capacity.
Yeah.
And we heard Salem, overbuilt and doesn't use theirs to the same degree anymore.
Clean Water Services Durham has lots of extra capacity as well, and Gresham had, and that's why they all either are doing or looking at brown grease
Yeah.
right now. They use it.
Well, and the other thing is whether or not we could borrow that, because I think the plan now is to not use a bond, but to go through,
State revolving fund.
Yeah.
Which
state
is what Steve
revolving
Donovan
loan.
will talk about.
Yeah, I guess I'd suggest if you don't have any more engineering questions, that we move over to Steve and you can see what the impact on rates will be. And that might help inform
I think Russ is.
your thinking.
Okay.
Well, we could go right into that rate discussion. I think that's fine. I was just thinking it may be just as part of the decision-making, if we can understand what those costs are going into it, it also helps that decision. If it's not a lot of work to generate those costs, I think it helps the group to
Yeah.
see what those potential costs would be.
I have the costs on a spreadsheet.
Okay,
It's my memory.
yeah. Well, I think that might be worth looking at them. I mean,
That's something we. can
that
do
was
as
the
a
point that
follow-up.
Karen originally stated. I think that's worth maybe looking at.
Thanks, Lynn. While we're killing airtime, I did let the Oregonian know that the wastewater treatment plant that was mislabeled as CCSD number 1s in the article was in fact Tri-Cities, but it didn't get updated. I did let them know that the Oregon City, not Milwaukee.
Good evening. My name is Steve Donovan. My office address is 9600 Southwest Oak, Suite 335, Portland, Oregon 97223. Before I get into the rate discussion, $150 million. That's the reason why we might want to reconsider not looking at a second digester. Because you've got $150 million of capital improvement plans over the next 5 years. This is just one project within that $150 million that still has to be funded. If we put another digester in here, we either raise rates or we possibly back off of improvements that we have to make at Kellogg, critical improvements that we have to make at Kellogg. So that's another compelling reason to think that, take the blinders off and look that we got a lot of things to do. And there's a collection system master plan coming on that's probably going to be in another $50 million. So we're bumping our heads on 200, 250 million. Now we're starting to really think about not only the rate profile, but what Lynn talked about, is it necessary and do we build just in time? And I think that's a compelling reason to think about that.
Can I, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Were you here while I was out? Because we have a few new folks at the table. Well, one new person at the table, so I just want to make sure they knew who you are and what your role was here.
I know.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right,
We know each other.
okay. Just wanted to check. Thanks.
Let's see here. Okay. The engineering team has done a great job of putting together the costs that are in front of you, and you had great questions. And now we're going to talk about rates. But we can't even talk about rates till we talk about how do we fund a project. And when we make rates, first we come up with a revenue requirement that has to come from rates. And that can be a number of things. So the real first thing that we want to talk about is how do we finance this project? And I know you're all very interested in this solids handling project and the rate impact of this project. So we'll focus explicitly on that. The finance team here is come up with a recommendation and a proposal to leadership for their consideration. And we would consider a two-pronged approach to finance the project. First, an equity contribution from the service districts, from WES, in terms of cash to the project. If you're building a house, you bring a down payment, right? And then the balance, you write a mortgage. We propose to do long-term debt. Long-term debt in this case, just to give you a sense of scale, the Service District Number 1 just recently refunded their long-term, their senior lien revenue obligations at about 2% is the true interest cost. They call it the TIC. And in terms of the rate impact of debt, Eric, if I borrow $1 from you, you give me $1 today, I promise to pay you back in 20 years. I would pay you 6 cents per year for 20 years. So you would get $1.20 back for the $1 that you lent me today. It's sort of like Wimpy the hamburger guy, you know? That is the level of rate impact that we're talking about. So debt, in this case, is very, very important to this utility to manage the rate profile. And I know you guys do this for a living. You're very familiar with that. The next thing with respect to debt is it's the cheapest form of capital to this utility. We have two forms of funding. Either we use rate dollars or we use debt dollars. Rate dollars, think of it as a opportunity cost. The opportunity cost to our ratepayers is what does it cost them? And their cost of capital is probably around 7 or 8% because of home mortgages, student loan debt, auto loans, and credit card debt, the most expensive of all. So it's clearly an advantage to us as utility managers to maximize the amount of low-cost debt, as you pointed out, that we can bring in. That will maximize our return on ratepayer equity. So that's the reason we're recommending both an equity contribution and a long-term debt contribution. So let's talk about what we're going to finance here. Through fiscal 15-16, that would have been through June 30th, 2016, $354,526 was spent on the solids handling project so far. And that came out of cash. That came out of cash in the construction fund. Now you're going to see $37,500,000 from fiscal 16-17 through fiscal 2021. Where did that number come from? Lynn was just talking about $30.9 million. This is what's budgeted for the project, and this project is going to be phased over 5 years. So you're right. The costs went up to take into account time value of money. What she talked about is overhead and profit. This is a budget figure. We wanted to go with this higher figure to show you the rate impact. My boss over here is very conservative. He wants to show you the worst case scenario. This is probably the worst case scenario for this project in terms of the cost of the project going forward. So what I want to show you here is this type of capital project is very common in our industry because it's phased. And it's going to pay a cash flow phasing over 5 years that's going to add up to that $37.5 million. And if we would have used standard revenue bonds or revenue obligations, we would borrow the entire project cost today, and we'd have to start paying it back today, principal and interest today. What we're suggesting the leadership consider is going to the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality's Clean Water State Revolving Loan Program. We are using that program now for the North Clackamas Revitalization Area loan. Tri-City Service District just last year retired a 20-year loan that they had outstanding. In my judgment, this is one of the best programs administered by the EPA through the states in the country. Many, 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 many millions of dollars of critical infrastructure has been funded through this program. So let me run you through the current terms of the program. The current cost of the program, or of this, is $37,500,000. We're suggesting that an equity contribution from the service districts of 50% be brought forward. Remember that pie chart that Lynn showed you, where there's a capacity piece and the operating piece, and she said, I think that's 57%? That means 57% of this project is SDC eligible. We can use SDCs for capacity expanding projects. And that's something we want to do. So there could be a mix of system development charges, fund balance, and free cash flow to meet that $18,750,000. So we've got $18,750,000 that would have to be borrowed under the program. Under the program, the really exciting thing about the SRF program is it operates not as a strict loan, it operates like a line of credit, like an operating line of credit. So that 5 years of cash flows that we're going to be incurring, what happens in reality, and the way it's happening now with the, when we built the North Clackamas revitalization area, when bills come in for the project in each of those years, Wes sends it over to the DEQ pays it, and the debt starts growing. We're not responsible for any principal repayment till the project is complete. We're only responsible for accrued interest on monies that we borrow throughout the term of the line of credit. That's a very, very helpful thing for municipal credits. The other very good thing about this loan is it's advantaged relative to the capital market loans that we've got. It carries a debt service coverage factor of 1.05 times versus our senior lien requirement of 1.2 times. It has a debt service reserve requirement of 1/2 of 1 year's debt service payment versus our senior lien requirement of 1 year's debt service payment. And then finally, it has a subordinate lien. And I'm probably talking a little geek here to you, but our senior lien, like your first mortgage, it has a senior lien against the revenues of the system. These loans, SRF loans, are subordinate to those senior lien loans. It helps the district manage its rate profile through that coverage covenant. And I could run you through it, but your eyes will roll back in your head. It's a means test, for lack of a better term, just like a Social Security means test. And it's not how much money you have in the bank at any one time, it's how much money came in the door this year relative to this year's debt service payment. And that can be very, very punishing at times. So back to the terms of the loan, as of right now, we would look to get a construction loan, a 20-year construction loan, and the interest rates on the program right now are 1.79% plus an administrative fee of 1/2 of 1% on principal outstanding. So the effective rate is 2.29%. If you run that out on a 20-year loan, we come up with a principal and interest payment at the completion of the project of $1,179,029. He's rolling his eyes.
I
This,
can't believe that.
this
I mean,
is
we're
such
not
a
using their
good.
money and not paying the principal back. That's amazing.
Well, that's why this is such an advantaged program and such, in my judgment, one of the best environmental funding programs in the nation.
Steve, if I might add on that slide, that we are assuming they're a 20-year repayment term. DEQ actually recently allowed for a 25-year repayment term.
And a 30.
And a 30. So again, we were conservative. Had we put a 30-year repayment in there, that number would have been significantly less, and you would see a significantly less impact on the rates. But we felt like a 20-year was conservative and appropriate.
So now, this chart, bear with me, I'm going to move a little slow on this one because it can be confusing. And I want you to start from the left in the first column here. What we're talking about here is the monthly rate impact across a range of investments by the two service districts. Now, if you look at the first column, we start at 50% and we move up to 64. You'll remember this 6436, that's a number that you should be very familiar with. That's the contributions of growth based on the Eco Northwest population study. And then we move the relative investment percentages by roughly 5 percentage points going up to 100%. So at 64%, the rate impact of this project for that principal and interest payment in 2021 is $1.18 per EDU per month for service district number 1 and $1.05 for the Tri-City Service District. Conversely, if we went 50-50, service district number 1 rate impact would be 92 cents. However, Tri-Cities would go up to $1.45. And you'll see across this range as service district number 1 takes on greater levels of funding responsibility, their rate goes up. The corresponding rate for Tri-City goes down to 0. In the case of 100% funded by service district number 1, it's $1.84, and it would be 0, of course, to Tri-City. So what we did here is we're going to do a comparison and take a look at, our frame of reference is what is service district number 1 paying as a percentage of total project cost? And we'll take a look at what that rate impact is. So here is the current rate of $45 a month for the average EDU in Service District Number 1. And what you can see here is a very nominal increases across an entire range of funding responsibility for Service District Number 1, starting with the 92 cents at 50/50, going to picking up the whole nut for $1.84 here. But what we wanted to show is the relatively small magnitude relative to what's being paid now. The engineering team has done a remarkable job. And here is the corresponding bar chart for Tri-City, where at $21.50 is the current rate. And as you can see, because going again across this range of expenditures by Service District Number 1, their rate starts out at 50/50 at $22.95. And if Service District Number 1 picks up the entire cost of the project, their rate is not impacted. That's all we wanted to show you here. Now, what we're going to show you is a bar chart of the relative changes. Now here, these numbers should be familiar to you by now. As you can see, at 50/50, Service District Number 1 is at 92 cents. But what we wanted to really talk about is these deltas. So here, for every 5% more funding responsibility taken on by Service District Number 1, it's roughly 10 cents per month to the Service District Number 1 customer. It's a dime. That's pretty compelling. Now here is the corresponding relationship for the Tri-City Service District. For every 5% more funding responsibility taken on by Service District Number 1, Tri-City gets a savings of about 20 cents per EDU per month. So that's the relationship that we talk about there. So what conclusions can we draw from the analysis? Well, like I said, the West engineering team has just reduced cost of the solids handling project when last year we came to you with a solids handling of about $56 million. Now we're coming to you with $37.5 million, which Lynn thinks she can still get some money out of that one. So they've done a remarkable job. Wes is in a financial position to cash finance 50% of the project. The question might come up, well, we may want to cash finance it, but do we have the cash? And the answer is yes. Between SDCs and fund balances, that cash is available. And in fact, if we divine from the Eco Northwest study, there's going to be considerable growth between 2015 and 2020, which will only add to that SDC cash flow. I know all of you elected officials are concerned. Be careful what you wish for. We've got growth coming, but can we host that growth? So that's that question there. And then based on the base case allocation of 64% cost assignment to Service District Number 1 and 36% to the Tri-City rate zones, here's the answer. It's $1.18 per month for the average CCSD Number 1 customer, and it's $1.05 per month for the Tri-City customer. I'd like to run this over to Greg now to maybe have him add one more comment.
Thank you, Steve. I just wanted to add that, we've been at this for over a year and a half now. Now we know what needs to be built. We know within a range, industry standard range, what it's going to cost, and we know what the impact to the ratepayers are, given several different scenarios. My charge from my board was to maintain a critical path to construction. As you saw from Lynn's slide, we need to start finalizing design early in the next year. So my intention is to go to the board December 13th with a recommendation on how to proceed with this. And I'd like to get your input on that.
A few questions. When you talk about those estimates, when you go back and based on population, is there any thought been given that you would adjust that based on population changes? So if you did the 64-36, if one of the other groups were to gain more population based on market conditions, would you then go back and reassess or redo these at some increment points along the path?
Typically, and I could possibly be talking out of school here, but you remember, the last time we did this, we did the PSU study. And
Right.
it was 5 years ago now. And we take sort of milestone stops. We don't go back and true up, Mark Lee. We usually update our studies, take a new reference point, and then go forward, knowing that they're based on estimates. We typically do not go back or true up, is that what you're driving at? Truing up for actual populations? Because the only thing we know for sure is the estimates that we've got and that we're going forward with are not going to be what really happens. So we take that into account and we don't look back. We plan going forward.
Yeah, I think plan going forward is fine, but as an example, we're going to, of course, the next census is 2020.
Right.
And so at that time, everyone's going to kind of adjust their population figures based on that census.
Sure.
And so if you have, and it could be either district, TCSD increases in population to 40, now they're 40%, or CCSD increases to where they're 70%. I mean, there's going to be some adjustment both ways, depending upon construction and all those other factors, economy, all that stuff. So I didn't know if the county was interested in saying, okay, at these incremental steps, say 2020, we're going to do a reassessment of those splits.
I don't think I think it's absolutely fair to say that we would reassess those splits, but we wouldn't say, okay, now that those splits happen, we're going to go back and give refunds
No.
to Kellogg and we're going to give extra charges to Happy Valley.
No, I'm not saying to go back and true up. What I'm talking about is in the future, you do an adjustment and say from now, this point forward until the next population.
I think that's wholly appropriate to do that. That's planning. That's just good planning.
So that may do it. The other question I have is, so this is good information, I appreciate this, but you have cash reserves that you said that we can pay 18,750 total. That
Simply as system development charges.
Right. So how much of that is CCSD number one and how much is Tri-Cities of that 18,750?
Well, just based on as of fund balances as of this morning, anticipating you'd ask this question. Service District Number 1 has $17,552,045, and Tri-City has $2,309,143. The lion's share is in Service District Number 1.
Okay. So let's assume that we take those cash reserves. Is that the total cash reserves that we have? I thought we had more.
Oh, no, there's more. There's construction fund
Yeah,
reserves.
total for CCSD number 1 is about 23 million, Tri-City about 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
You've got some horsepower.
but we don't want to use it, as you're talking about, we've got a lot of other projects
This is
coming up.
one project in $150 million worth of need, and the finance guys are going to be just shaking, don't add more cost.
Right. So what I'm saying is, so if you assume that we pay the 18,750, that's, just take that out of our reserves and pay that down, then we get the one loan for the 18,750. Do these then rates, the $1.18 and $1.05 still apply, or are they going to be less? Or what is this number based on? What is the,
It's based on what you just described.
It's based on exactly what you just described,
okay, so it's the 18,750,
exactly.
okay.
And that's what the principal and the 1,107,000, that principal and interest payment, that's going to result from that loan. That is the new revenue requirement of this project.
Okay, another question I have, sorry, keep asking questions, but we're basing this on population, not on EDUs per se.
Well, the rates will be based on EDUs.
Right, I
But
understand
you're
that.
right, the driver of the EDU growth is population, Margaret.
Okay.
You're absolutely right.
Because, I'm sorry Gladstone isn't here, part of Gladstone's district is covered by Oak Lodge Sanitary.
Right.
So actually, part of their population is not being served by this at all.
It's absolutely right.
Has that been taken into
Yes,
consideration?
it has.
Absolutely.
Yes,
It
it has,
has?
absolutely.
Yes.
As far as the
Lynn has been
okay.
absolutely meticulous about that. And
Okay.
it's pointed out in the Echo Northwest study.
I believe we even pulled out this small section of Gladstone that drains to CCSD number 1.
Okay,
There's even
put that in our,
there's even a corollary to that in Oregon City. I believe that some citizens in Oregon City are not served by the Tri-City Service District because of septics or other uses. So there's definite variations on that theme, but they have been accounted for.
okay, I appreciate that. That's all I have at the moment.
At the moment,
Eric?
Okay. What I hear you saying is that we're going to use the reserves from CCSD 1 to basically fund this entire thing, or almost all of it.
no.
And the question the issue I have going forward here, I just want to finish this out, is that I am tired of having CCSD 1 be the deep sock for this project. And so if we're gonna fund the majority of the down payment, then I would expect Tri-Cities to pick up the majority of the debt service.
Oh, I don't think that, our assumption all along is that 64-36 split would be applied to the down payment too, and Tri-City would be held responsible for coming up with the equity contribution. And based on the population study, Oregon City is going to be growing like a weed between 2015 and 2020. They are going to have substantial growth in that spurt. Then it's going to level out on the backside, but that's one of the things in the Echo Northwest study that we statistician types really were surprised at. The slope of that curve in Oregon City between 15 and 20. They're going to be bringing in significant development fees. And we anticipate and we fully expect them to pay their pro rata share of the equity contribution.
But is it gonna be 64-36 all the time?
Yes.
That's the planning study.
One of the issues that has yet to be resolved, and it may not be resolved by this committee at this time, is that when CCSD1 built the membrane plant up at Tri-Cities, the issue was, and once we built that, we had achieved capacity parity. And the partnership also talks about capacity parity. This particular committee's bylaws talk about capacity parity, and yet it doesn't seem to be
Why
defined.
Greg asked me to put this 50-50 split up here just to show you the rate impact. And Eric, I hear the anger in your voice, but look at the
I'm
relative
not, I'm not angry. I
magnitude.
just want to get to the bottom of the definition of capacity parity, and when does that start? Because as we went forward with the Blue Heron project, I raised that issue, and we only paid 50% of the cost of the Blue Heron, and Tri-City paid the other half. And so I was under the impression, which I think most all of the CCSD1 ratepayers were as well, that our cost of expanding the program was only 50%, whatever was needed.
So Eric, I wasn't part of the capacity parity conversation. It was well before my time.
understand
But
that.
we've been talking about this, and the numbers that we put in front of you with the rate projections over a year ago now were based on at the time, 63-37, but that split. And it's been kind of throughout this conversation, so we wanted to make sure that it was up there because we've been talking about it the whole time.
And
We haven't,
every time you brought that out, I brought up the capacity parity issue, haven't I?
well, I don't, maybe. So anyway, but I did want to include the 50-50 because I know that question is out there. My intention here is to present a range of options that I would feel comfortable presenting to the Board of County Commissioners, saying this group is of a mind that this is how this project should be cost shared.
Well, one of the questions I have, going back to this thing right here, at what percentage would it be where both districts started out with the same rate?
It'd be $1.13.
And that would be at what percent?
That would, in that situation, that would be a pro rata, where everything, we would simply do a pro rata calculation, where we would take the total debt service divided by the sum of the EDUs for both districts to come up with a simple average. That fulcrum is $1.13 versus $1.05 or $1.18.
Okay.
So, $1.05, $1.18, $1.13 seems like a pretty good deal.
Well, I'm just raising that question because it seems to me that that would be a better way to do it. If you're gonna say, look, we're gonna go forward with this, and both districts are gonna pay into it, why not set the percentage so that you arrive at $1.13
I think from a
for
staff
both
level, we
districts?
wanted to honor what we've said in the past, and we wanted to be true to what we have told you before, rather than to say, and now we're gonna do it this way.
The staff decided that,
This-
without input from the River Health
It
Board.
came from me. It came from me.
All
So
right, well, you're the one.
Inject the
Okay.
spear here.
How much are we paying you?
Oh.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Russ?
All right.
I'm not comfortable with changing the parity issue right now. I like this model sticking forward. I have one question. Maybe I should know the answer to this, but I don't. For the TCSD portion, by increment, we have at Tri-Cities, our separate agreement, Gladstone, Tri-City, West Lynn,
Sure.
of which Oregon City is doing the principal growth.
Right?
So is there a breakout of that $1.05 that in our agreement that comes out of it, or does that just get equally split amongst the three cities?
Equally,
Equally split.
I shouldn't say split amongst the three cities. It's spread
It's-
out across our the ratepayers within the district.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, so that's an average number.
average
Right,
number,
right,
okay.
right.
Got it. Thanks.
I'm sorry, you've had all the questions you can ask.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
I'm just getting warmed up. So if you did the $1.13, you just said everyone pays the same.
Right.
The end result, though, is because of the higher population base in CCSD number one, they're going to be paying more of the project.
In absolute dollars.
Absolutely correct.
Absolute dollars, right.
Just to give you a sense of our forecast of EDUs in 2021, 53,361 for CCSD number one, 33,781. So that's the factor that you're talking about, and you hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
You would be paying more because you've got more EDUs bringing to the party.
Right. So I need to bring this back to my council before I can make a judgment, say this is what we're going to do. I don't know about other people, but I think what we can do tonight is certainly eliminate the ends and kind of come down to a middle that everyone's kind of comfortable with. So that would be kind of the recommendation going forward. Because we have to take, I don't want to take back to my council, here's all the list of options. Rather, I want to take back to my council, this is what this group recommends is a fair way to do this. And that would be the best for all of us.
And Markley, our singular focus is the critical path. We've made a promise to him that we will stay on this critical path, and that's why we're kind of being crabby with you about this.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's any disagreement, certainly from Happy Valley standpoint, to move forward with the project. All we're doing right now is saying, okay, how do we pay for this, and what's the right way to do this?
Well, I think
it's to be
the
fair
other
to
thing that
everybody.
I would suggest that you share with your council, it's a buck.
I know, it's
It's a buck.
minimal.
And it's an increment of capacity that's going to get us out to 2030. I mean, I think that's a pretty darn good investment.
I mean, so when you're talking about the difference between us, $1.18, $1.13, them $1.05 and $1.13, it's pretty minimal. And to me, the $1.13 rate, I'm just advancing, is fair to everybody, and people with more population are going to pay more.
A year ago, when we were doing this, I never would have thought that we would have come full circle to this. I am just so pleased. I'm absolutely tickled pink that we can come back to you with these kind of answers, with confidence and specificity.
It's good.
So this is a, dollar and cent increase for this particular project. You're talking now about another $150 million
we
in
are.
projects. When is that intended to hit? What is that addressing, and what are the rates likely?
Right
going-
now, on the front end, without having in front of me, the biggest and most important and critical path on that is the rebuilding of Kellogg. Kellogg has got some critical projects that absolutely have to get done, and they're expensive. There are other projects that are replacement in nature, but this is the biggest capacity chunk of within the 5-year plan. The looming one on the horizon, as talked about, is the collection system master plan, facilities plan, that
For
is
Kellogg.
going to be extremely expensive.
Okay, and that's going to have a different sort of cost allocation model
It
used
would
for
almost
that.
be entirely service district number one? Is
Yeah.
that a fair statement?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Tri-City wouldn't really have much impact on that at all.
All right?
There's a lot of meat to these financials, and I'm wondering, with all due respect to the people representing cities here, would it be handy to have Mr. Donovan or Mr. Geist attend to interpret these just as they've done tonight? Or do you feel comfortable taking it back to your body and explaining it all?
Well, I certainly feel comfortable talking to my council about it. I mean, I have enough financial sense of this. But I think what would be important from my perspective is to hear from Tri-Cities as well and go, what are you all thinking on this? Are you thinking the 3664, the $1.13? Because like I said, I got to take this back to my council, and I want to know kind of what the flavor is here. And Milwaukee, of course, what you're thinking.
Well, I haven't been involved with the rates, this parity matter, but if it's been decided before in this 3664 and it's recommended, I would suggest we move forward with that as an initial recommendation. That would be my suggestion.
I would support that too, although it would definitely take all options back to the city.
Let me stop for a minute here and say, these are a range of funding options. They are not recommendations or suggestions. It's just, we wanted to give you the full flavor of how big is the bread box across a range of funding scenarios. So I didn't want to come across like we're trying to, you pick that one and we'll give you a set of hand towels.
But you have a recommended one here with the yellow stripe.
Other than that, yeah, other than that.
That's the one that's been, that percentage has been bantied about.
Get
Get
there.
there.
So, I mean, that's something, Karen, from your city,
I mean, I think this is a fraction of what we originally discussed. I mean, we've been having to levy small amounts of fees on other things to account for future costs, so this will literally be a dime compared to the rest of the things that we're having to face.
Yeah. The one thing on the conclusions, the first bullet, I don't know that's really relevant. West Engineering Team reduced the cost of the solids handling project from 56. I mean, the scope of the work changed. I mean, we're at 2 digesters, so I don't know what you've really reduced.
Well,
I mean, we've changed the whole scope of the project, so is that really?
Partly.
Have you reduced the cost, or you've just refined the costs?
Partly,
I
yeah.
mean-
I would say, when Lynn described, yes, we did change the design criteria from 2040 to 20, and said 2030 is acceptable. But there was also a lot of value engineering and you know, looking at all the different various projects and kind of shrinking them and finding savings. So I think it is fair to say both are true.
I guess, Markley, from my perspective, my council is, judging from the last time I discussed wastewater with them, they're pretty much over it. So,
that's true for my council too.
so I think I will probably send them along this materials handout and let them know it's gonna be a lot cheaper than what we originally envisioned. But I don't anticipate them saying, hold up, don't build that digester.
We can't.
Yeah, and in my council either, I mean, they're not gonna say, hold up, they're just gonna kind of look at this and go, yeah.
Like this one, yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's fine. But I mean, and if Tri-Cities, you really want the 6436, I can take that back to my council, be happy to, and say, it's kind of the recommendation of the group.
Well, I want to consult with Counselor Perry first, just on the record, since she's been here before, but I think that's a good starting point.
Okay.
I think that seems reasonable. How's that look to Oregon City? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Gladstone, I don't know when no one's here in Gladstone, but.
You don't?
I think I heard they have a council meeting tonight.
Okay.
I think somebody mentioned that to me.
So may I suggest, because I did mention, I need to have something to the board on December 13th. So it seems like we're settling in on this 6436.
No, the cities are.
Oh,
Can we at least
I
get
see
something?
there's a card up from Mr. Hofield over here.
Can we at least get something, a motion or something to the effect that's what you're going to take back to your councils, and then you can let us know what their feedback is, so that we don't necessarily have to have another meeting just to deal with this.
Eric, did you have comments?
So, Diane, I'm going to ask for your support here on this.
Well, don't hold your breath there, Eric, but.
I'm looking at the 6436 as a split based on growth for the investment in this digester process. That's a separate issue from the rate going forward, in my mind. So I would like to see, and I would be happy with, a rate that splits the two and go with $1.13 from each. Then you've got a 50-50 sharing of the debt that goes into that. You're already taking 64% of the reserves out of CCSD 1, is that correct? For the down payment?
Well, the down payment would be shared 6436, correct?
Exactly,
Sure,
that's what I'm
sure.
saying. Okay, then you're gonna borrow the rest,
Right.
and that's gonna be paid back.
6436.
Well, I'm saying it should be paid back 50/50,
Well,
You mean $1.13?
$1.13 for each. Why would that not be fair?
We're going to be here longer than 8 now.
Yeah, I would just like to remind people,
I'm
when we
just
are
at-
talking about
You know,
pennies.
I feel
pennies
like
per
what's
month.
happening, that the unincorporated is being rolled over again by the cities. You got Oregon City say, well, that's reasonable. Westland says, well, you know, the 6436 rate sounds good. You guys are saying that's the same rate. Markley says, well, I'll take that back. So my question is, let's discuss the $1.13 each. What is the issue there? I mean, what do you see as a problem?
I think
I'd like to
the
know.
idea when we originally talked about the 64-36 split was that it's reflective of our overall growth trajectory together.
I understand that, and that's what we're gonna construct, okay? And the
Yeah.
cash and the debt's coming out of there. I
So we'd
guess-
be paying our apportioned
So for the
share.
next 20 or 25 years, we're gonna pay 64% of the debt back,
Right.
right? That's what this represents, isn't that correct?
Right?
Is that fair, Diane?
That's the way I'm understanding it, but I also know that and I know that you haven't always agreed with these numbers in the past, but I know it's been a big concern of this group. The fairness issue has been probably top of the list about who's paying for this. And although we haven't always agreed with the population growth numbers that we've been presented with, we haven't necessarily disputed them either. So I hate changing midstream when we're this close to the finish line. And I don't disagree with you, and I will say too, it's just a buck is not just a buck. Because here's the way we think out there in the real world is it's a buck here and it's a buck there and it's numerous bucks and pretty soon. And then how often do we hear about
But it
projects?
was $4.
It was $4, but how often do we hear about projects going over budget? Every single day, you know? So you're giving us worst case scenario, which I love to think is truly the case.
is.
But I also am a realist knowing that that number's gonna get hit and it might even go over. So I'm waffling here only because I think the 64-36 is kind of where we need to stay right now because that's what we've been working with this entire time. So, sorry,
I think
Eric, don't hate me.
I'm in agreement with Diana because I think the overall rate impact to CCSD, number one, per EDU per year would be 60 cents. If we went to rate parity, perfect rate parity, and I don't think that kind of cost savings is worth going back on how we've been discussing this partnership from the get-go.
Well, I won't bring that up as an argument if I can get agreement from Oregon City and West Lynn that they'll go with the 64-36 on the rates.
We have to talk
Otherwise,
to our
I'm gonna fight
commissions
this to
about
the
it.
very end.
Yeah, so what I would do is I'd make a motion that we take the 64-36% back to our councils and commissions and then get feedback back to you. And I agree, Greg, we probably, unless there's some big stuttering thing, we don't need to really get back together as a group. We can vote. Well, actually, maybe.
Well, no, and
Maybe not.
well, no, and I'm only saying, I hear where Eric's coming from because
Yeah.
the unincorporated, we don't have a city to go back to ask them if this is okay. And we pay the biggest portion of all this. So it's a little hard for us. We are trying very hard to represent our constituents. We're trying to make it fair. I think, again, we're getting down to splitting hairs here, and we're talking about so many pennies that it might not be worth this group's pain to go try to rework the numbers.
I think Russ had his card up.
Well, I just wanted to make a quick comment on the technology and the risk or, this likelihood of it being costly more. I mean, this is fairly well-known technology. It's not, I don't see, and there's a 25% contingency already built into the cost. So I think this is probably a high end, a rather high end, probably for what we're looking at. I mean, we're not stepping into, an unknown technology, and there's a lot we've known about the site. There's not really site surprises, to my understanding. We know the depth of bedrock. We know what our foundations are going to look like. So, I think it's gonna actually be less than this even, which
I'm
is
a
even
cynic,
better in the
sorry.
end. So, it's just to keep that in perspective.
Thanks. I think we still have a motion on the floor.
I'll make that a formal motion.
Yeah.
We take back to our councils and respective groups, the 36-64 split.
I'll second
Second.
that.
Wait a second.
Clarification?
Yeah.
Does that mean that the River Health Advisory Board will reconvene as well, so we can share it with the other members?
No, I don't think River Health's meeting until
December 5th.
December. So they might have time to weigh in before
I am,
the meeting, but I don't know. I mean,
When's the next council meeting?
I don't know when the next
I
River
don't think
Health
we
is.
have it scheduled yet.
The best thing you can do is contact your local commissioner.
Thank you.
Those are the ones who represent you.
You know, Eric,
And they're
that-
gonna be making the final decision.
Yeah,
I think as chair of the River Health Board, you could certainly reach out to them with this idea, as the other folks are reaching out to their councils. My expectation, though, given the constituency of that, is they're gonna say, fine, do it.
Yeah. Well, as I go, and picking up on what Diane said, the unincorporated pays the largest chunk, and they have probably one of the smallest areas of growth, or they don't have that much growth compared to Happy Valley or Oregon City.
That's not true, Eric.
No,
Yeah,
No.
Unincorporated.
The North Clackamas service area is one of,
unincorporated area.
yeah, it's growing a lot. There's a lot of industry, and they take up a lot of
Yeah,
EDUs.
yeah.
So,
Well, I ran the numbers here.
Jennifer,
It doesn't look like
Jennifer Street.
we've got Happy Valley at 42% growth and unincorporated at about 14, so.
but percentage growth is based on the population spread, because, I mean, we have a smaller population, our percentage growth is higher.
I know, that's why we pay the most.
No, Happy Valley has a smaller population, so our percentage seems higher, but
No, I
Really?
understand, but I'm just saying,
Talking about
I'm
total EDUs.
comparing the revenue that's being generated and the amount that we're paying
Diana?
versus the growth.
Oh, no, that was an old one,
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
So,
Okay.
I'm just saying, my point is, I hate to see the unincorporated be run over again merely because we don't have a city.
I don't think that's the case. I think very clearly one of your
I
commissioners
definitely-
said,
well-
take it up with the appropriate folks. I mean, we
Temporary.
just have different
It's a
governing
perspective,
bodies to
yeah.
go and talk with first.
yeah, I mean, I can't make a decision here without talking to my council. That's all. I'm sure the others are the same.
Yep.
So,
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that the cities will take it back to their respective councils and commissions to discuss. All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Terrific.
Abstain.
Okay. All right. And the deadline on that, Greg? It's fine. Deadline on that to get you feedback.
Well, I guess it depends on when your next council meetings are.
Next couple weeks, I think.
Yeah, we've got a council meeting on the 15th, but I'm going to have to contact Jason tomorrow to see if we can get it on the schedule, and Lori, the mayor. And if not, then our next scheduled council meeting is the 1st of December. So it'd be before your December 9th meeting, because we have to get it, we have to notice it.
Okay, how about Friday, December 2nd?
Well,
Yeah.
So
That's,
s-
Well, let's think about this now, because I need to have a staff report. If we're going on the 13th, the 7th is my drop dead date to get a staff report in. So the 6th would be the last, well, the 5th, really.
yeah, I think we can do that. 'Cause
and
we-
I think we're meeting in work session on the 5th, but maybe we could have a special meeting portion of that if
I
we
wonder if we
needed
could
to.
each send out the meeting packet to our cities within the next couple days and ask them to flag it for us if there's gonna be any major disputes, so at least we can let Greg know. We'll have the proper discussion with our commissions and councils, but if it's going to be a go, no-go issue for any of our cities, we should get that information to him sooner than the 7th.
I would appreciate that.
December 7th, though, is the date the drop dead date
Yep.
for, okay.
Yeah,
When is Brenda back?
She's back tomorrow, and then she's got another little phase where she's gone. Let's see, she's,
She's got a
On the
cute,
jet lag,
she's got a
too.
cute granddaughter now.
she does, let's see, she's back tomorrow, and then she's gonna be out the 4th to the 9th. Oh, so, but she could probably participate
Okay,
remotely. I'll check that with her. We'll get it taken care of.
Great.
We'll find a way.
thank you.
I mean, and I'll send an email to our council and say, here's what's going on, so they know about it. And see, because we may not have to take a formal vote, we could just reach a consensus in a work session.
Yep.
Potentially, so. So we can
Okay,
do.
great. Any further business?
I have just a comment, I suppose. Like I said, we've been at this for over a year and a half. I want to thank you all. I'm very pleased that we got to this point. I also want to thank West staff for getting us here. Folks that help arrange these meetings, our engineers, operations staff. So it's been a heavy lift.
Yes.
Not consultant, the consultants get paid for this. So thank you all.
Madam Chair, I'd like to say it's been a pleasure to work with all of you. I know you'll continue your good work on this committee, but, I'll be leaving here real soon. But again, I want to thank you for working with you all during that time.
Thank you.
You,
You mean you didn't make it?
What?
You didn't make it?
No!
Do we need to meet in December to reconvene? Okay, so
what do you think we do?
Thank you, John.
I too probably will not be joining you again.
I will not be either.
It's been fun.
Well, that's our, your last meeting, thanks.
Um,
Your term limited?
Yes, I'll come back in 2 years.
Awesome. Okay, well,
We should have a party.
yeah. Starting by coming out on time. Thank you, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure.
How will the unincorporated know what your results are? You gonna send an email out?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I appreciate the confidence and faith you've put in me as being chair for the year.
And
Good
thank
luck-
you for
good
being
luck to the
chair.
next
We
person.
really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, very good job.
thank
Excellent.
you. All right, then I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
So moved.
Done.
Done.